Welcome to Supervision 101. My name is Sarah Strayer, and I'm an assistant professor and director of field education with the Master of Social Work program at Alliant International University. I've been in social work as a student and practitioner for over 22 years. With that experience, I spent a lot of time in supervision as someone who receives supervision as a supervisee and someone who provides supervision as a supervisor. However, information on supervision is typically focused on enhancing the supervisor's role, while individuals who receive supervision may have limited training on the topic. This lack of technical support for supervisees may leave them feeling confused and disempowered in the context of the supervisory relationship. With that framework, this training aims to empower and equip students, new social workers, and any professional who receives supervision but has had limited training on the topic with the knowledge and skills required to better understand the purpose and utility of supervision in internships and professional practice. And during this introduction to social work supervision, participants will explore descriptions, functions, and developmental stages of supervision, as well as clarifications of responsibilities and ethical considerations. In addition, the significance of cultural competence and diversity in supervision will be identified to emphasize sensitive and responsive supervisory relationships while addressing the inherent power differential between the supervisor and the supervisee. Participants will also delve into critical aspects of social work supervision and discover tools and strategies to effectively engage in supervision, navigate conflict, and establish a positive supervisory relationship. Practical guidance on how to prepare for supervision and engage in reflective supervision to create a stronger alliance with supervisors and increase professional autonomy will be highlighted. These workshop components will empower participants to engage in supervision in an intentional, meaningful, and responsible manner to enhance professional practice, provision of services, and personal growth. Before diving into these topics, it's important to first understand what supervision is. So there are numerous definitions of supervision, but for the purposes of this presentation on social work supervision, we'll use the definition by the National Association of Social Workers, also abbreviated as NASW, which is the largest membership organization of professional social workers in the world. In their document, Best Practice Standards in Social Work Supervision, NASW defines professional supervision as the relationship between supervisor and supervisee in which the responsibility and accountability for the development of competence, demeanor, and ethical practice takes place. The supervisor is responsible for providing direction to the supervisee who applies social work theory, standardized knowledge, skills, competency, and applicable ethical content in the practice setting. The supervisor and the supervisee both share responsibility for carrying out their role in this collaborative process. We also need to know the professional standards and ethics for supervision to provide context to this relationship. So the NASW Code of Ethics describes the profession's commitment to and best practices in providing and seeking supervision throughout a social work career. NASW describes that social workers promote social justice and social change with and on behalf of individuals, families, groups, organizations, and communities. Social workers are sensitive to cultural and ethnic diversity and strive to end discrimination, oppression, poverty, and other forms of social injustice. These activities may be in the form of direct practice, community organizing, consultation, administration, advocacy, social and political action, policy development and implementation, education, research and evaluation, and supervision, which emphasizes the critical role that supervision holds in professional practice and social justice. Now, on the screen, I have listed the standards in the Code of Ethics that explicitly include supervision, including social workers' ethical responsibility to clients, 1.04, competence, which describes that social workers should provide services in substantive areas or use intervention techniques or approaches that are new to them only after engaging in appropriate study, training, consultation, and supervision from people who are competent in those interventions or techniques. That standard also states when generally recognized standards do not exist with respect to an emerging area of practice, social workers should exercise careful judgment and take responsible steps, including appropriate education, research, training, consultation, and supervision to ensure the competence of their work and to protect clients from harm. In addition, under social workers' ethical responsibility in practice settings, Standards 3.01 discusses supervision and consultation in that social workers who provide supervision or consultation, whether in person or remotely, should have the necessary knowledge and skill to supervise or consult appropriately and should do so only within their areas of knowledge and competence. Social workers who provide supervision or consultation are responsible for setting clear, appropriate, and culturally sensitive boundaries. Social workers should not engage in any dual or multiple relationships with supervisees in which there is a risk of exploitation of or potential harm to the supervisee, including dual relationships that may arise while using social networking sites or other electronic media. And social workers who provide supervision should evaluate supervisees' performance in a manner that is fair and respectful. Under 3.02, education and training, social workers who function as educators, trainers, field instructors for students, which is a term used for individuals who supervise social work student interns, should provide instruction only within their areas of knowledge and competence and should provide instruction based on the most current information and knowledge available in the profession. Social workers who function as educators or field instructors for students should evaluate students' performance in a manner that is fair and respectful. Social workers who function as educators or field instructors for students should take reasonable steps to ensure that clients are routinely informed when services are being provided by students. And social workers who function as educators or field instructors for students should not engage in any dual or multiple relationships with students in which there is a risk of exploitation or potential harm to the student, including dual relationships that may arise while using social networking sites or other electronic media. Social work educators and field instructors are responsible for setting clear, appropriate, and culturally sensitive boundaries. So we can begin to hear a theme throughout these standards. And then finally, in 3.07 administration, social workers who are administrators should take reasonable steps to ensure that adequate agency or educational resources are available to provide appropriate staff supervision. And these definitions and standards help us understand that supervision is a key component of social work practice that has a direct impact on service consumers by shaping social workers' professional competence and behavior, ethical decision-making, and the quality of social work interventions provided. The supervisory relationship shapes the supervisee's overall practice experience, the quality of their learning, and skill development. And as such, supervision is positioned as a critical resource for social workers to improve consumer care, enhance their longevity in the profession, and contribute to their well-being, making it vitally important and relevant to social work practice. And with this understanding, we acknowledge that supervision requires more than casual conversations, and it's not personal therapy. Effective supervision is complex and involves multiple elements. And I want to provide a reflection point for you to stop and begin to think about, process, and be informed by your experiences to answer the questions, what supervision should look like? When does it work? What makes it work? So please take a moment and reflect on those questions. So there are several models of supervision available, but one commonly used is based upon the work of Kadushin and Harkness, which delineates three main types of supervision, including administrative, supportive, and educational. On the screen, there's a picture of a stool to depict the important role each of these components of supervision plays in the overall process of supervision. If any one of these elements were to be removed from supervision, the stool would fall over, therefore depicting how supervision would then be less effective and relevant to practice. I want to further explore these elements of supervision, starting with administrative. Administrative supervision focuses on the efficient and effective delivery of services to achieve organizational goals. This type of supervision involves day-to-day management of the supervisee's work, which may include discussing and explaining agency policies, laws, and procedures, assigning cases or other work tasks, reviewing and explaining paperwork, and monitoring casework or other projects. Educational supervision involves discussing theoretical approaches and strategies for interventions with client systems, reviewing ethical issues, and examining how issues in the social environment and issues of diversity and culture affect the client or client system. It focuses on educating staff for a more knowledgeable and skilled performance of tasks and helping the supervisee learn what they need to know to do their job effectively. Educational supervision can involve assisting with professional development, using individualized learning plans, and providing the supervisee with positive and constructive feedback. Supportive supervision provides support, reflection, and encouragement to improve the supervisee's performance, morale, and job satisfaction. It entails discussing the supervisee's emotional reactions to the work and to the profession, and helps the supervisee to develop self-awareness and implement self-care to help them cope with work stressors, navigate conflict, and support ethical decision-making in practice. Supportive supervision aims to create a safe, comfortable, and empowering environment that promotes high levels of performance. It works to reduce psychological or emotional barriers that may impact practice and helps the supervisee develop confidence and realistic perspectives about the work, addresses cultural issues that impact the work supervisee's perception of clients, and provides positive reinforcement for effective performance. And through the lens of a social work internship, some students have one social work supervisor, while other students may have both a social work supervisor and a task supervisor. The task supervisor is typically primarily responsible for providing administrative supervision, while the social work supervisor provides the bulk of the educational supervision. Both the social work supervisor and task supervisor should offer supportive supervision. It's also important to note that the three elements of supervision are not mutually exclusive. So, for example, in reviewing a case record, supervisors have an administrative focus when they look for compliance. They have an educational focus when they identify areas requiring additional instruction to ensure that the worker acquires the necessary knowledge or skill. And they have a supportive focus when they provide positive reinforcement of competent practice. So how can we identify what makes a supervisor effective? Effective supervisors will work to develop a trusting relationship with the supervisee, create an environment where the supervisee can discuss difficulties in practice without fear of disapproval, not only give positive comments, but also offer critical feedback, facilitate reflection and encourage expression. An effective supervisor will also respond rationally and support students emotionally. I also want to help define and provide context to what constructive criticism is and how to provide it, which should be as soon as possible, specific, objective, descriptive, highlights positive performance, focused on the behavior and not the person, shared for consideration, and can be effectively absorbed and offers closure to the situation. As another point of reflection, let's consider how identity informs supervision. So consider how your identity relates to your work in social work supervision. So factors such as age, class, race, ability, religion, gender identity, sexual orientation, and other identity markers intersect and influence an individual's experience of supervision in regards to power, privilege, and marginalization. Further, we can use intersectionality theory to help us better understand how people may be viewed by society and how discrimination, oppression, and social injustice occur, persist, and are experienced by individuals. So please take a moment to reflect on how identity may relate to both the supervisee and supervisor's role in supervision. To further explore this topic, we'll highlight cultural competence as an essential element of effective supervision. Cultural competence is never fully realized, achieved, or completed. It's a lifelong process for social workers who will always encounter diverse clients and new situations in their practice. Supervisors, colleagues, and workers should have the expectation that cultural competence is an ongoing learning process that is central to daily supervision. Social workers should conduct supervision and other professional responsibilities with cultural humility and sensitivity to cultural language and difference. So with this understanding, supervisors and supervisees should engage in self-awareness to help them recognize their own biases, develop empathy, and become better prepared for culturally responsive practice. Self-awareness becomes the basis for professional development and should be supported by professional supervision. Supervision also provides an opportunity to monitor cultural competence among supervisors and supervisees by evaluating culturally appropriate service delivery models and setting standards for cultural competence and reflecting on the dynamics that result from cultural differences and similarities between supervisors, supervisees, and clients. In addition, social workers who provide supervision and consultation are responsible for setting clear, appropriate, and culturally sensitive boundaries. Supervisors should have specialized knowledge and understanding about the culture of the client population served by the supervisee, and supervisors should be able to communicate information about diverse client groups to supervisees and help them to use appropriate approaches, skills, and techniques that reflect their understanding of the role of culture in the helping process. The supervisor who is supervising a social worker with a different cultural background than themselves should develop knowledge about that culture as it relates to social work practice. Primary sources of information may include the supervisee or other practitioners familiar with the supervisee's cultural community. Both supervisors and supervisees should take responsibility for learning more about different groups and culture through literature and education as well. It's critical to note, however, that disenfranchised groups should not be responsible for serving as tutors, which serves to further marginalize and oppress them. This is an exhausting, traumatizing, and potentially dangerous task. And this is related to power dynamics between supervisors and supervisees, which are inherent as a result of the hierarchical structure of supervision. So power is the ability to implement authority. Supervisors serve as evaluators of supervisees' work and gatekeepers to protect clients, which can place supervisees in a vulnerable position. Failing to attend to the power dynamics in supervision can result in ineffective or even harmful supervision that presents legal and ethical risks to supervisors and supervisees. Supervisors often experience a dilemma between developing trusting relationships with their supervisees and responding to organizational demands. Supervisors may experience tension in being open and transparent with supervisees while also trying to meet the expectations of the organization. So the extent to which power is exercised within supervision impacts the supervision relationship and influences the supervisee's feelings of safety. Negative uses of power can include things like preferential treatment towards a particular supervisee, supervisors imposing their own clinical style, abusing their power, violating the supervisee's confidentiality, and supervisors prioritizing their own needs over the supervisee's needs. Supervisees also hold power in deciding what information to share with the supervisor or what information to withhold from their supervisor, and being consumers of supervision by determining how they engage in supervision and the feedback they provide to their supervisor. So seemingly both supervisors and supervisees exert power, which influences the outcome of supervision. To address power dynamics in supervision, scholars suggest supervisors explain the supervision process, define the roles and confines of supervision, and encourage discussions of potential boundary issues, such as, for example, sexual attractions or dual relationships. The importance of supervisors reflecting on their privilege is also noted, which might contribute to the power dynamics in supervision. Cultural identities and social norms also influence the supervisory relationship by virtue of privilege or lack thereof. Positive uses of a supervisor's power can include things like facilitation of discussions of power during supervision, sharing ideas, providing feedback, evaluations, empowering supervisees, promoting safety in the supervisory relationship, establishing a collaborative partnership, and defining the expectations of supervision. As another point of reflection, please take a moment to consider what contributes to quality supervision. So in the following video, I'm going to play here for a few moments. We see a supervision role play from Kate Walker Training to see if you can identify concerns or challenges in this supervision scenario. The individual on the left side with the red and white striped shirt that you'll see is role playing as the supervisee, and the individual on the right side with the dark colored shirt and glasses is role playing as the supervisor.
Hey, boss.
Hey,
Sorry, I'm running late.
I was beginning to wonder if you were going to show or not.
Yeah, got hung up in traffic.
Okay, are you prepared or
yeah,
ready?
let me borrow your pencil here. Something. Here you go.
Okay, are you settled in?
Oh yeah, I'm good.
Okay, I've kind of noticed this is a reoccurring issue that seems to be you coming in late. You know, at first it was subtle and now it's becoming more and more.
Yeah, it was traffic. I'm okay. It's all right. Just do your supervision thing. Let's go.
But it seems to be occurring week after week. Do you think maybe we need to change the time or something?
You know, I got this other job and I'm running out of there on my lunch break to get over here. And
well, like I'm saying, we could possibly change the time and do something
honestly,
different
really
so it'd be more.
I don't have any other time. I mean, you know, when we talked about this initially, I told you it was going to be kind of a squeeze in with everything else I was doing, and I have a lot going on right now. So I appreciate you and, you know, your generosity and allowing me to do this, and, you know, it's just, hang on, my phone's ringing. I turned it on vibrate like we talked about last time, but, hello? Yeah. No. Okay, no, I told you about that. Yeah, I'm kind of in a meeting right now. I'll have to call you back later. Okay, bye. Hang on just a second. I gotta send this guy a text message real fast. So go ahead. I'm sorry, I'm gonna waste your time.
I'm kind of concerned that was that a client, was it an emergency, or was that just a
Well, it was an emergency, but it wasn't a client. But it's okay, it's done with now.
Okay. Because I mean, I don't want to interrupt if there's an emergency. You know, if there's someone or something at stake, or your child's at school and no one's to pick them up, or your client, you know.
Nothing like that.
Okay, well then we need to.
Stockbroker.
This is our time together. And your stockbroker. I mean, he can make decisions for you with or without you give him consent to do whatever he needs to do and not interrupt us.
We were talking about this stock, and I really needed to get rid of it this morning. It was going down in value, but you know, I'm here to do supervision, so let's talk about that.
Okay. We're here for supervision. I'm glad that you noted that and stated that we're here for supervision, because that's what we need to be doing, and I find ourselves drifting further and further away from that. And that's a little bit of a concern. So what I want to do is try to focus more on what your role can be to try to be more proactive in the fact that what's going on in here is about you being a supervisor, being a counselor and helping your clients, not doing other business and stuff. And again, you're texting and stuff like that.
Sorry,
So
that bothers you?
Well, it doesn't bother me. It's just distracting you from. Can you tell me what it is I just told you just a second ago? Can you reflect back to me what I just mentioned?
Yeah, you want to make sure that I'm here and involved in the supervision process. So I'm great at multitasking. I got what you're saying.
About your clients. What about your clients?
Oh, they're doing great. Having some great sessions. In fact, I brought.
What did I say about your clients?
What about them?
Well, see, while you were texting, I was suggesting that, the purpose of us being here is that I'm supervising you so that you can be an effective counselor for your clients.
I got that.
Yeah, but you didn't. When I asked you what I said, that's not what you reflected back.
I didn't know you wanted verbatim. I'm sorry.
That's where I was headed, because I'm trying to point out that your texting is taking you away from what we're really doing here and now. You're not in the here and now.
Okay, well, I'll put this away.
That would be very good.
Right.
I would appreciate that. Thanks.
Okay.
And I want to make it very clear that if it is an emergency, a life emergency, client emergency, type of thing, by all means, that's an important thing. But when it goes beyond that boundary, then you're kind of stepping outside the bounds of supervisor, supervisee, and we need to keep it professional within that realm. I mean, if you're stepping outside of those boundaries, which we're beginning to find more and more in the way that you're dragging other things into our sessions, you're taking up time of our sessions and have to spend 1 hour with you. Not just 1 hour in the same room with you. It has to be 1 hour with you and with your clients, discussing. So you prepared? Do you have your notes and everything on what you did this week and your clients?
I brought some of them. And in fact, I brought my laptop. I was gonna get it out. I know I typed up a lot of my notes this week, and let me find it here somewhere.
Okay. But you didn't print any of this stuff out ahead of time, or?
No, I kind of ran out of time.
Well, see, pulling it up on the laptop is going to take you a good 5 minutes to get things started.
I was using it earlier, and it's out of power, and I didn't even bring my charger.
Well, what you need to do is work on organization. I think, when I want you to come to our meetings, our sessions, you need to bring hard copies of what's going on as far as records and stuff.
Like
we're going to
case
discuss notes. Well, yeah, to begin with, so that way we can focus on that, or whatever notes it is that you have that you want to discuss with me in regards to your clients. Because you're here.
Okay.
So in that role play scenario, we can notice that the supervisee was late to supervision, to the scheduled session, and they didn't notify the supervisor who was waiting for them. We can also see that the supervisee was not prepared for the session and that they appeared disorganized, frazzled, and distracted, resulting in them not being focused and emotionally or potentially psychologically ready to engage in supervision. They also scheduled supervision during a time that wasn't ideal for them. They also did not come with the needed tools, having to borrow a pencil from the supervisor, not having the needed case notes, and their laptop was not charged where they could access those notes. They also took a non-emergent phone call, sent text. They were attending to their phone during supervision, which took time and attention away from the supervision session. And they also came in without an agenda or focus for the supervision session. And I'm sure you may have identified other areas as well. So focusing on what are the roles and responsibilities in supervision, we'll start with the supervisor. So the NASW and the Association of Social Work Boards published a statement of best practice standards in social work supervision. Their best practices are organized into 5 standards, which provide context for the supervision and supervisory relationship. So to start with, that context includes understanding the scope of practice, cultural awareness and cultural supervision, dual supervision, and conflict resolution. It also includes conduct of supervision, which includes confidentiality, contracting, competency, and self-care. Legal and regulatory issues of supervision, which include liability, regulations, and documentation. Ethical issues, which include ethical decision-making, boundaries, self-disclosure, attending to safety, and alternative practice. And technology, which includes distance supervision and risk management. I'm going to highlight just a few of these areas to help further describe supervisors' roles and responsibilities. So the qualifications for an approved social work supervisor are specified by the licensing statutes and regulatory standards for each jurisdiction, and may include specifications for each level of social work practice or be universal among different levels of practice with one set of qualifications. The general qualifications for a supervisor may include a current license to practice at the specific level or above the level at which supervision will be provided, and in the jurisdiction in which both the supervisor and the supervisee are practicing. A degree from an accredited school of social work, specified coursework in supervision, a minimum number of continuing education hours in supervisory practice as required by the jurisdiction or both. A minimum of 3 years or more, if required in licensing statutes, of post-licensure practice experience, continuing education hours as required for maintenance of supervisory credentials in practice jurisdictions, and being free from sanction of the licensing board for violations of practice standards. In addition, social work supervisors should have experience and expertise in the practice area and with the population of the supervisee's practice. Supervisors should have competencies in the theories and various modalities of treatment and maintain currency through the use of professional journals and continuing education. Supervisors should also have training in supervision, which requires knowledge of the principles of supervision and the abilities to demonstrate necessary skills, such as addressing both strengths and challenges of the supervisee, modeling and discussing ethical practice, and providing support and encouragement in the learning context. Supervisors should also be familiar with the administrative and organizational structure of the agency or practice domain of the supervisee. They should also adhere to the NASW standard for cultural competence in social work practice and have specialized knowledge and understanding about the culture of the client population served by the supervisee, as well as knowledge of the supervisee's culture as it relates to social work practice. Supervisors play a key role as leaders and role models in professional development of their supervisees. So the actions and advice of the supervisor are observed by the supervisee and consequently influence much of the supervisee's thinking and behavior. Teaching is an important function of the supervisor who models the behavior the supervisee will emulate. Supervisors should create a learning environment in which supervisees learn about the internal and external environments in which they work, as well as the environments in which their clients find themselves every day. Social work supervisors also share responsibilities for the services provided to clients. So liability of supervisors has been determined by the courts and includes direct liability related to negligent or inadequate supervision and vicarious liability related to negligent conduct by the supervisee. Supervisors also help supervisees learn ethical decision-making, a process that is both cognitive and emotional. Supervisors should discuss and model the process of identifying and exploring problems, looking at issues, values, principles, and regulations. Supervisors and their supervisees should discuss possible consequences as well as costs and benefits of certain actions. And they should then explore what actions best achieve fairness, justice, and respect for others, and make a decision about actions to be taken and evaluate them after implementation in that ethical decision-making process. Supervisors must also make sure supervisees are aware of safety issues and train them how to respond to workplace conflict, respond to threats and harassment, protect property, and deal with assaults and their emotional aftermath. Supervisors help supervisees plan for safety in the office and in the community by learning response strategies and appropriate ways to respond to crises. The evaluation and outcome of the supervisory process is an integral part to the development of professional social workers as well. So the evaluation of the supervisee, as well as the impact and outcome of supervision, is a significant responsibility of the supervisor. And an evaluation serves many purposes, which really vary depending on the setting and context. An evaluation can be used to determine whether a supervisee is able to practice social work with increasing independence in a competent and ethical manner. Now, thinking about that video we watched previously, we can begin to understand the importance of roles and responsibilities in the supervisory relationship. So now focusing on the supervisee's roles and responsibilities, we understand that they must ensure and maintain the confidentiality and privacy of their colleagues, peers, and the people they provide professional service to when engaging in individual, group, or peer supervision, except where legislation like mandated reporting requires otherwise. Supervisees also maintain clear professional boundaries when engaging in a supervisory relationship and should remain open to respectful, constructive comments on their practice or behavior. Supervisees should also actively participate in the supervisory process and attend supervision that is relevant to their area of practice with an appropriately trained social work supervisor. Supervisees also should attend all scheduled supervision meetings and seek and respond openly to feedback and actively contribute to the agenda for all supervision sessions. Supervisees should also plan and come prepared for supervision sessions by compiling records and evidence relating to practice, such as case notes, case studies, feedback, or research literature to support the reflective learning process. In cases where the supervisee believes that the supervision guidelines or their learning needs are not being met, they need to communicate and alert their supervisor to this. So social work supervision was initially and for many, many years provided as an apprentice-based model whereby students were matched one-on-one with social workers performing a variety of skills in an agency-based setting. Individual supervision is still a commonly preferred option when supervisees are provided a choice of supervision modality. In this, you as the supervisee meet individually with your one assigned supervisor. The supervisee has the opportunity to discuss their cases in detail and dive more deeply into their own professional role and development. Now, group supervision, on the other hand, is made up of 3 or more supervisees, and usually up to no more than 6 individuals per group, and led by an experienced group supervisor. The supervisee gains understanding, acquires new skills, and develops professional identity by watching and learning from peers in the group. In group supervision, the supervisee can make connections and hear viewpoints from many other supervisees, which may expose them to different perspectives on how to approach a case or learn about alternative theoretical orientations. Group supervision is more time efficient for the supervisor, allowing them to supervise more than one supervisee at a time. And group supervision also allows supervisees the opportunity to experientially participate in a group. And while it's not a group therapy, the stages of development of group supervision often mimic the stages of development of a clinical group. So the supervisor models for you as the supervisee how to facilitate a group effectively, including how to develop group norms, manage conflict within a group, and deal with different personalities within a group. So given the demands for social work supervision and the limited numbers of social workers who qualify or who are willing to provide supervision, social workers have developed alternative models like group supervision in order to meet supervision needs. And it's important to learn to use supervision in a purposeful, intentional, and responsible manner. Prepare for each meeting and do not expect your supervisor to do all of the talking during supervision. Bring questions, observations, and requests for input and feedback to supervision meetings. For each supervision session, the supervisee should come prepared with an agenda, such as discussion of recent practice experiences, review of cases, goals, successes, questions, concerns, challenges, connections or applications of knowledge to practice, assistance with assessments or interventions, and discussion of relevant articles, among many other things or topics. Use this time in supervision to examine your performance and explore new ideas. Do everything you can to develop a positive working relationship with your supervisor, because this person will teach you, support you, guide you, correct you, evaluate your performance, and you hope will recommend you for professional advancement in the future. Supervisees can also gather supervision resources to help them prepare for supervision. So I have a list of topics for supervision on the screen, and the idea is that the supervisor serves as professional role models for students assisting in professional development. So supervisees can bring topics and discuss topics like safety, professionalism, mandated reporting, values and ethics, boundaries, self-care, and developing a professional identity. These are just examples and are optional to use, but one thing that you should definitely be discussing in supervision is your progress in your social work practice and competence. Another point of reflection here is thinking about what makes it challenging to engage in supervision and what are some solutions to these challenges. So please take a few moments to think about that. So it's important to consider how supervisees navigate conflict in the supervisory relationship when things are not going well. Dr. John Gottman is a mental health researcher and practitioner who identified 4 types of negative communication styles that he refers to as the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, which is a metaphor for the 4 horsemen of famine, pestilence, war, and death that usher in the apocalypse in Christian tradition. So Gottman uses this metaphor to depict issues that negatively impact relationships, and these issues can also be identified in the supervisory relationship. The 4 horsemen of the apocalypse represent criticism, contempt, defensiveness, and stonewalling, and occur in a sequential and progressive order. Identifying the 4 horsemen in your relationships, including the supervisory relationship, can help you eliminate them and replace them with healthy, productive communication patterns. So the first is criticism, and criticizing your supervisor or vice versa is different than offering a critique or voicing a complaint. Criticizing can make one feel victimized, rejected, and hurt, and often causes the relationship to fall into an escalating pattern where criticism reappears with greater and greater frequency and intensity, which eventually leads to contempt. So the solution or the antidote for criticism is using I statements, such as I feel or I need, and then respectfully ask to have that need fulfilled. There's no blame or criticism, which prevents the discussion from escalating into an argument. The second is contempt. And this is when we treat others with disrespect, mock them with sarcasm, ridicule, call them names, or mimic or use body language such as eye rolling or scoffing. The target of contempt is made to feel despised and worthless. Contempt goes far beyond criticism and assumes a position of moral superiority over the other person. And this is fueled by long simmering negative thoughts about the other person and can come to a head during a heated discussion or argument. So the solution or the antidote to contempt is to express understanding, present a respectful request, and end with a statement of appreciation. The third is defensiveness, and this typically is a response to criticism. We may feel unjustly accused, we may look for excuses and play the innocent victim in order to protect ourselves and blame someone else. This is not a successful strategy because our excuses just tell the other person that we don't take their concerns seriously and that we don't take responsibility for our mistakes or our actions. Defensiveness will only escalate the conflict. So the solution or antidote to defensiveness is a non-defensive response that can express acceptance of responsibility, admission of fault, and understanding the other person's perspective. And the fourth and final is stonewalling, which occurs when the listener withdraws from the interaction, shuts down, and simply stops responding to the other person. So rather than confronting the issues with the other person, people who stonewall can make evasive maneuvers such as tuning out, turning away, acting busy, or engaging in obsessive or distracting behaviors. It's a result of feeling physiologically flooded, and when we stonewall, we may not even be able to be in a state where we can discuss things rationally. So if you're stonewalling during a conflict, stop the discussion and ask to take a break and return to the conversation when you feel. This helps calm our nervous system and return to a psychologically and physiological state where we can effectively engage with someone else. It's also important to discuss expectations of the supervisor and supervisee. So supervisors have expectations that the supervisee will be cooperative, have initiative to take on new tasks, follow directions, accept feedback, and be ready to learn. Supervisees' expectations of the supervisor is for them to teach and train the supervisee, to provide some structure around what the expectations are of them, provide feedback, evaluate their progress and performance, and provide support. Now, some suggest the supervisor relationship mirrors the stages of beginning, middle, and ending in the helping relationship. So in the beginning stage, the supervisor orients the supervisee to the agency and the work, is closely overseeing the supervisee's tasks, and addresses the supervisee's initial skills and competence. So new workers are typically feeling fear, excitement, and anticipation during this time. So it's important to spend time in orientation to the agency and practice and clarifying roles and expectations. This is typically when the supervisor will direct the supervisee to read the policy manual, attend workshops and training, shadow and observe the supervisor and other staff, and interview key staff or stakeholders in the agency. During this stage, it's important for the supervisor to tune into the supervisee's feelings, clarify roles, expectations, and purpose, outline the supervisee's day-to-day activities, orient them to agency culture, address misconceptions, and share safety policies, practices, and skills for workplace safety. So explaining the process for if harm occurs and validate their concerns and experiences. In the middle stage, the student transitions from being more dependent on the supervisor to becoming more independent. And this stage is often characterized by a struggle between the supervisee and the supervisor, in that the supervisee may feel ready to practice when what they've learned, while the supervisor may be more hesitant to send them out on their own for independent practice just yet. So be sure to maintain open and respectful dialogue during this stage to share perspectives and reach a point where you're both comfortable on how things are progressing. So during this stage, the supervisee's learning needs evolve, and the supervisor should work to create an environment for open discussion. Let the supervisee, it's okay to make mistakes, and model non-judgment. Ask supervisee questions, explore their thinking, provide supportive, direct, and constructive feedback, continue to be mindful of relationship dynamics, and help the supervisee to link theory to practice. So name the theories being used and engage the supervisee to increase evidence-based practice. And finally, the ending stage of the supervisor relationship is where the supervisor should be fostering independence and preparing the supervisee for the next step in their independent professional practice. Supervisors will also need to support supervisees as they navigate endings if they're promoted or leave the organization. So reviewing accomplishments, exploring feelings, and discussion of strengths and areas for growth are helpful during this stage. So supervisees in this stage may need to terminate their clients, or if this is a student, maybe they're ending their internship with you. So at that point, the supervisor would need to deliberately raise the ending, explore the supervisee's feelings around that, reflect on their time together, what was learned, solicit feedback from the supervisee, help to make a plan to wrap up their work, discuss scores on evaluations, and highlight strengths and areas for further development. I have another application piece. I have a case study here that I'm going to read through, and then we want to consider how the supervisee in this scenario can use supervision in that situation. So I'll read through this. We'll take a moment to reflect, and then we can discuss. So the case study starts with Jessica, who is a senior social worker at a large urban child welfare agency. With over 12 years of experience, she specializes in working with families in crisis, child protective services, and trauma-informed care. Jessica recently became the direct supervisor of Maya, a newly graduated Master of Social Work professional. Maya, who is passionate about community work, completed several internships during her studies, but has never worked in a full-time professional role. Maya was assigned to the Family Intervention Unit, which handles high-stake cases, including child neglect, domestic violence, and substance abuse issues. Given the complexity and emotional weight of the work, Jessica expected Maya to take on a small caseload initially, but manage it with a high degree of independence. Maya quickly realized that working in child welfare came with intense emotional challenges. Many of her cases involved difficult, heart-wrenching situations that weighed heavily on her, causing her to feel emotionally drained. So let's take a moment to consider how Maya could use supervision in this situation. So during supervision, Maya could bring forth her concerns and how it was impacting her work. Maya can also set goals to better understand how to cope with the emotional challenges of child protective services work and learn techniques for maintaining emotional resilience and develop self-care strategies that would prevent burnout and secondary trauma. So for Maya, this can include something like scheduling personal therapy sessions with a counselor. Jessica, the supervisor, could use supervision to encourage Maya to reflect on how certain cases affected her and how she could separate her emotional responses from her professional role. Jessica, the supervisor, could also introduce Maya to mindfulness techniques and encourage her to set boundaries between work and personal life to protect her emotional well-being. She can also stress the importance of self-care practices like exercise, seeking support, and taking time off when needed. And hopefully you came up with additional strategies as well in a way that Maya could use supervision to support her role. Here are the references that I used in this presentation. And I truly appreciate your time and attention. I really hope this information was helpful in exploring supervision and empowering you to engage in it. Thank you so much.